Hello everyone, one last day of previews for Rising Sun. Let's go over my slightly better than mediocre opinions. For the last day of previews, I just have some stuff I felt like showing off. Okay, Kitsune. So it's an omen. You'll remove a token from whatever prophecy is in play. Choose two different options, +2 action, +2 coin. Each other player gains a curse, gain a silver. That seems pretty good. The flexibility of it is what makes this pretty cool. If you're in a situation where you can gain and play the silver, then this could sort of generate 4 coin for you. It's a village, it's an attack. It's not like nothing is super powerful here, but it's the flexibility which makes this card potentially not like super strong, but something you might pick up a couple of in any game you're playing. You might get 1 or 2 of these for the action, for the large amount of potential coin, or for the attack. I don't see anything. I don't see much in terms of specific synergies or other strange things we could use this for. It's a pretty straightforward card. And of course the way, the options that you choose here might change a lot depending on whether the prophecy is unlocked or not and what the prophecy is. We saw a prophecy yesterday which gives unlimited actions, so this card in some ways becomes a little bit less desirable if you have unlimited actions unlocked already. It's expensive, right? But it's a cursor. Early on, if you think about the early game with a card like Witch, Witch draws you 2 cards and sends out a curse. At best case scenario, well, not necessarily. I can think of cases where you don't want the Witch to draw copper, but the Witch, in some sense, by drawing 2 cards, could give you 2 coin in the form of 2 copper. So this is very similar to that, except the Witch also, of course, has the benefit of cycling your deck. This is close to that. Give out a curse, get 2 coin. But it also has flexibility. When the curses run out, which is not exactly a very good card, whereas this becomes, a village silver. Okay, yeah, I don't have much more to say about this one. I can't really think of any special, weird, tricky combos or anything like that. Let's look at Rice. +1 buy, +1 per different type among cards you have in play. So I could see this could generate, it's worth 7, but this could generate a huge amount of money. Look at all the types we have. Action, treasure, attack. In this expansion, we have omen. We have a duration. That's another type. What are the cards that go on your cards that go on your mats? Are they called reserve? There's looter. There's all the rotating piles from allies have names. The augurs, the wizards, and so on. Typically this will probably be at least a gold for you, a gold plus a buy. You'll have like an action, a treasure, and maybe one other type. Maybe it's a duration, maybe it's an attack. But in some games, I see this getting up to like 5 or 6. There are ways you can put victory cards in play, victory actions. So, I like this. It's going to be one of those cards where sometimes it's pretty much just a gold and a buy, in which case it might still be worth gaining in some sense, especially if it's the only plus buy. But it'll be really nice to see when this is like an explosive payload. But even within, just within this set, oh, and there's reactions. That's another type that you often have in play. Even just within this expansion, there are 5 types even just listed on my screen right now. So that's like, that's a platinum with a buy. Okay, Riverboat. At the start of your next turn, so we're seeing, at the start of your next turn, play the set aside card, leaving it there. Oh, and there's a setup. Set aside an unused non-duration action card costing 5. So this basically is obviously the strength of this depends a lot on what the set aside card is. But if the set aside card is something that has, say you set aside a 3-cost card, then this is like quite a bit worse, because you play Riverboat and you don't get the 3-cost benefit until the start of your next turn. I mean, if I'm thinking of all the action cards that exist in all of Dominion right now, all the non-duration, let's say 3-cost action cards, I would, it would take a lot of work to come up with an example of one where I would prefer the effect at the start of my next turn rather than now during my current turn. Assuming you don't have a huge amount of overdraw and that kind of thing. Not only that, but Riverboat being a duration means that you play this sometimes half as often as the standard card. On the other hand, if it sets aside a very powerful 5-cost card, then awesome. You're going to get yourself a bunch of Riverboats. It means you can essentially open with a strong 5-cost, except that the play of that card is delayed by a turn. But it's not delayed by a full shuffle, it's delayed by 1 turn. So you're still playing that 5-cost card in your second shuffle. It's a little sad if you see Riverboat on turn 4, and let's say the powerful set aside 5-cost is Witch or Recruiter or something like that. You see Riverboat turn 4, then you play it on turn 4, it does nothing, and then you shuffle your deck, and at the start of turn 5 you play this thing, and so Riverboat's just missed a shuffle. If Riverboat happens, if the set aside card is a Witch, then that curse is very unlikely to go into the third shuffle of your opponent. Depends on turn order, of course, and on which turn you draw Riverboat. But still, you can open with this good 5-cost card. So that's nice. But again, certain things like playing Recruiter is something, obviously early in the game doesn't really matter, you just play it. But later in the game, I don't want to be playing Recruiter at the start of my turn, because what if I have my whole engine set up, I play Recruiter, and I don't have anything that I want to trash in those starting 7 cards. Still, I'm using Recruiter as one example of a very strong 5-cost card, but maybe something that doesn't have any inherent downsides at all. Like, Butcher. You don't have to trash with Butcher. Getting Butcher, opening Butcher would be very good. So obviously, this is a card, like so much in Dominion, it depends on what else is in the kingdom. But specifically for Riverboat, it depends on this one other set-aside card. I can see Riverboat being something, another situation. Here's another situation where Riverboat might be really good for a low-cost card. If the set-aside card is the only village in the kingdom, Village is a 3-cost card. Typically, I'd much rather buy Village than Riverboat Village. But if it's the only one in the kingdom, sure. Or if it's the only source of plus buy in the kingdom, sure. But this is going to be a card that very often you never touch it, and very often, well, maybe not very often, but sometimes you open with Riverboat. Let's see what Donald X has to say about these ones. Kitsune is another omen. It's the fabled witch that can do something else when the curses run out. Yeah, this is exactly this is one of the things that I said. Early on, it's maybe not quite as good as witch, because witch actually draws cards, cycles your deck, which is good. But when curses run out, witch is a pretty bad card. I often find myself trashing it for benefit if I can. But yeah, it does something after the curses run out. Good. Rice can make you oodles of money, but would like you to feel the variety of card types. Action, treasure, omen, shadow. Oh yeah, shadow is another type that exists in this expansion. I forgot about those. It's kind of like one of those menagerie cards, or not menagerie, cornucopia cards, where you want a lot of different things in your deck for the synergies that they get just off of having variety. Funny thing about Rice, though, is that it doesn't operate very well in money decks. In a very money-ish deck, you might have one action and some treasures. Think like Smithy money. Rice is only a silver with a buy, but almost certainly not worth spending 7 on in a pure money deck. Okay, Riverboat does something good next turn. I could have made all of those cards individually, and instead here's Riverboat. Yeah, maybe, but it could be. I suspect often you'll find better options to Riverboat in the kingdom elsewhere, and Riverboat, the pile might often go totally untouched, but other times it'll be very important. Okay, let's check out the landscapes. Divine Wind, another prophecy. What? What? What the hell is this? This is a joke. This is an April Fool's joke, right? This is That's hilarious. When you remove the last sun, remove all kingdom card piles from the supply and set up 10 new random piles. Okay, the first thought I have with this on how to use this, and a situation when you really want to be the one to trigger that, is if you've taken 1, 2, or 3 of the really powerful cards in the kingdom, and your opponent hasn't been able to get those yet, like maybe they get 1 of the really powerful 5s and you've got 3 of them, then you want to rush to trigger this, and they don't have the chance to get those powerful cards anymore. Now, of course, you don't know what's going to come up in the 10 new cards, but you might have a huge leg up on your opponent. This is bizarre. This is hilarious. I mean, I've joked with friends before that, we say something like, oh, we should invent a Dominion card that says, when you play this, play a full game of Twilight Imperium, and the winner of that Twilight Imperium game gains 1 province. But, or something vice versa, action card in Twilight Imperium. Play a game of Dominion. The winner of that Dominion card gains 2 trade goods. But, this is kind of like that. I don't have much to say about this, right? The other thing that this does, though, is it makes it like super difficult to plan. You can't. What you want to do probably is look at the original 10 Kingdom cards, pick out ones that are like strong engine components or just strong cards universally. Grab those, and then when Divine Wind unlocks. So another thing that I'm not really in tune with yet, is at what point in the game will prophecies typically get unlocked? So in 2-player games, you need an omen to be played 5 times. If both players open with 1 omen and no one ever picks up another omen, then each of those is going to be played on the second shuffle. And then each of them will be played again on each player's third shuffle. So prophecies are typically going to unlock somewhere between like turns 5 and 8. Big plus or minus, probably closer to 6 or 7 usually. So if you just, you basically can't plan beyond turn 7 or 8. But just pick up some very strong cards, like things that are universally strong. Trigger this, and hopefully your opponent has not had the chance to pick up quite as many of those super strong cards, and then replan everything for your kingdom. This is just hilarious. It's bonkers. I think it's funny, but I don't really have much else to say, because how do you plan for something like that? Okay, let's look at Amass, an event. 2 cost. If you have no action cards in play, gain an action card costing up to 5. Okay, so this means you can open with 5s. This should end up... this is going to accelerate games again. It's similar to... There's an old event, I don't remember what it's called, but it's kind of like the analog for treasures. It says if you have no treasures in play, gain a card costing up to 4. I don't remember what that event is called, but it's a 0 cost event. It allows you to gain cards up to 4, but this one allows you to gain cards up to 5. So typically you're going to see this opened with on turns 1 and 2. You're just going to amass twice. Very, very rare examples where you would not open with this on turn 1 or 2. If you have what is the trait inherit? If you inherit an action card, maybe it's better to play that than to gain a 5. If you open if you have shelters and you have Necropolis and you can play Necropolis for as a way for something really good, maybe you do that rather than opening with a 5 cost card. Just like everything in Dominion, it depends on what else is going on in the kingdom. But main way this is going to be used is to open with 2 5 cost cards. What could the options be? Wharf Recruiter. There you go, and you're on your way. It works. It anti-synergizes with durations, but after the first 2 turns, I don't see this being played very much. Maybe in a moneyish kingdom. Oh, you have to gain an action costing up to 5, so you can't gain duchies. Gain an action costing up to 5. Yeah, I was going to say in a moneyish kingdom, later in the game, if you're really slogging it out and you only hit 4, you could use this to gain a duchy, but you can't gain... You have to gain an action. Yeah, that's I don't see this being purchased terribly often late in the game, because late in the game maybe you use it as a way to empty piles, but how are you going to empty piles? Empty a 5 cost pile? You'll need multiple buys. You will need some amount of money, and where are you getting that from if you don't have action cards in play? Yeah, okay, so let's go to the last one. Kintsugi. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. Kintsugi, a 3 cost event. Trash a card from your hand. If you've gained a gold this game, gain a card costing up to 2 more than the trashed card. I see myself opening this on turns 1 and 2. Trash estate turn 1, trash estate turn 2. And then later in the game, it's later in the game you remodel your golds into provinces. I mean, that's kind of cool. This is going to be one of those flexible, opportunistic cards. Like, again, it wouldn't surprise me if the best thing to do on many kingdoms is to just trash 2 estates in your first 2 turns. You're really sad opening a 2-5 with this. If that is the optimal thing to do on a particular kingdom, you're really sad opening 2-5 because you can't afford it on the 2, and then on the 5 you can't trash an estate. You're trashing a copper. And then, of course, a little bit later in the game, even if you haven't gained golds yet, if you're generating, you generate 8 money with plus buy, hit this, trash an estate, gain nothing, and then you still have leftover money for a 5 cost. In many ways, it might encourage you. It's encouraging you to gain a gold at some point during the game. Trashing your estates into engine components could be good, but other than those first couple of turns, I don't know. Trashing an estate, the analogy that I've heard is trashing a single estate from your deck is like adding a laboratory to your deck. So, because, a laboratory draws 2 cards. If one of those 2 cards it drew is an estate, then it essentially only drew 1 card. So the laboratory was effectively a cantrip if you draw total junk. But a cantrip being added to your deck is, for most purposes, equivalent to adding nothing to your deck. So, that's, this is basically like saying it's somewhere around saying pay 3 and gain a laboratory. Now again, laboratory is like, it's okay to open with, but it doesn't really do much for your deck early on. What opening with this twice does do, you trash 2 estates. It means that on turn 3 or 4, you're guaranteed to hit 5. Now, of course, the math of the shuffles is completely different because your deck is now 8 cards instead of 10. But it means you're definitely going to hit 5 on turn 3 or 4. You'd rather hit it on turn 3, because if you hit it on turn 4, you've reshuffled the deck already. So the 5 cost that you buy on turn 4 is slightly delayed in terms of it actually getting into your deck. But if you hit 5 on turn 4, that means on turn 3 you're hitting. Oh yeah, so on turn 3 it means you would hit. Hold on. No, it doesn't guarantee that you hit 5. Because you have 8 cards. 1 of them is an estate. If turn 3 you draw that estate, it means you have 4. And then you have 3 cards left in your draw pile, but on your next turn you have to reshuffle that estate back in. So you could draw the same estate on turn 3 and 4. But of course, if you draw the estate on turn 3, then you could buy this for a 3rd time in a row and trash that estate, and that would guarantee that you hit 4 on the next turn. But again, then you've just used 3 turns just to trash estates. Again, it might be the right thing to do. It depends on what else is in the kingdom. But yeah, this will be, this also turns into essentially like a remodel variant. So as soon as I see trash gain something 2 more, I'm thinking trashing golds into provinces. It requires you, of course, to have gained a gold, so gain a few golds. And then this is not that expensive for a late game. If you have 3 golds in your deck, you can't play them to do this, but generating 9 money and 2 more buys than your natural buy is not terribly difficult. And then that's a triple province turn right there. So I see this. Yeah, this is okay. Let's see what Donald X has to say about this. I would love to hear what Donald X has to say about Divine Wind and why he's thrown such a ridiculous concept at us. Divine Wind sweeps the board clean and refills it with who knows what. Try to get everything you need from the first set of 10 before it blows through. Okay, I think you could have said something more impactful and hilarious about Divine Wind. But, I mean, this is, in terms of how it plays, this is what I think, is get the strong stuff now. And then when this comes through, I mean, it's also kind of, it'd be funny if you see your opponent grabbing strong terminal cards, but terminal cards that definitely need support. And if they're not getting the omen to flip the board, then don't bother helping them. Just, stick with the current kingdom. They've loaded up with some strong terminal actions with no support for them. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know if that. I don't know how much how much strategy will go into having an omen and deciding not to play it. It seems like some of the omens we've seen so far, even without the omen effect, they're strong enough that you would play them on their own, regardless of the prophecy. So it seems like probably a pretty bad idea to buy 1 or 2 omen cards and then not actually use them for their standard effect. You would need to see your opponent doing something absolutely ridiculous with all the prophecies. Really, you would need to see them going all in on the prophecy being unlocked, and then you just don't play the omens, and it would have to be like a completely orthogonal strategy, planning for the prophecy and without the prophecy. I don't see that being a very big thing. I think you basically just play around the prophecies being unlocked. I'm sure Donald X designed the omens to be quite strong cards on their own, so that it's very likely the prophecies get unlocked. Would make sense. All right. What does amass do again? If you have no actions, gain an action costing up to 5. Okay. Amass means the early turns can be spent taking exactly what you want, and sometimes a later turn. Yeah. So that's pretty much what I said. I think amass is going to get bought the first 2 turns for both players in 99% of games. And then on your second shuffle, if you happen to draw a hand without those actions you just added, if you happen to draw a hand of just treasures, you probably use it again. And then it may never see the light of day again. Kintsugi is a trashing event that turns into a remodel once you can fill in the cracks with gold. Yeah, sure. I talked a lot about opening this 3 times on the first 3 turns and trashing all of your estates. I don't know if that's going to be a smart thing to do. You're often probably in a better position to just add good cards to your deck, but I could see it being done very frequently on at least one of those 2 turns. There was an event released recently, I think either in Plunder or in Allies, probably Plunder, which is, I don't remember what it is, but it's either trash an estate from your hand or gain an estate from the trash and a card costing up to 5. Very often, very often, it is a good thing to open with that event and just trash an estate. So this is very similar to that in that it allows you to trash your estates right away. So cool. That's the previews. Tomorrow, TGG will have the digital cards. Woo! And typo. And Dominion Games may be letting people play the set on another server over the weekend. Physical versions will be available in Europe in around a week. In the US in around 3 weeks. In Japan a bit later than that. All right, yeah, I'm pretty excited for this to be released tomorrow. I heard a little bit of discussion from the developer on Discord that they don't know exactly if they're going to be forcing the new expansion into the daily kingdoms over the next little while. They said that there were some difficulties in doing that. They were able to do it for one of the previous expansions. I think it was Plunder, but that's because it was before the official release of the app. It would be cool to see a lot of this new stuff in the upcoming dailies, but I mean, obviously we'll get around to it eventually. Yeah, so thanks for watching my mediocre comments that nobody asked for. And if you have anything to add to what I've said about some of these specific cards, then be sure to leave a comment.